Outa says Eskom's application to energy regulator Nersa for a 32% price hike in 2023 would be a slap in the face of consumers and businesses who continue to suffer under load shedding. Eskom implemented stage 6 load shedding for the second time this year over the weekend, with warnings of quote-unquote unprecedented outages still to come. Joining us now is the organization Undoing Tax Abuses project manager on energy. That's Brandon Slade, who speaks to us from Pretoria. Brandon, good morning to you. Let's start with exactly what you are saying there, that if indeed this latest ask by Eskom is implemented, would be a slap in the face of not only consumers but businesses who are battling under this pressure. Do you think that the utility is fast losing public sympathy, or that horse is long bolted?
Yes, good morning. Thanks for having me. We are quite in a conundrum at this stage with the stage 6 and stage 5 load shedding being rolled out all over the show. It's indeed a slap in the face. Eskom applied for total allowable revenue of 334 billion rand for the 2020-23-24 financial year next year. So this is on the face of, first of all, Eskom not delivering services, and secondly, Eskom not being up to par as far as governance and maintenance is concerned. So we have seen from year on to year end that Eskom keeps on approaching Nersa on the same basis, using the MYPD process as a safety net, because there's no incentive or no penalty for Eskom if Eskom does not deliver the services. So the notion behind Eskom approaching Nersa is, first of all, there will always be the safety net of government guarantees or government bailouts when Eskom is short of revenue. And secondly, if there is no other revenue source to source money from, it's from the electricity consumer or the taxpayer, which is why Eskom is approaching Nersa in terms of this process.
Yeah. Let's talk about what you are quoted as saying, that there is something particularly peculiar about this latest tariff increase proposal, and that is the significant changes in the utilities' latest application, which is an increase in the fixed monthly charge. What's significant about that, and why should we stand up for ourselves, consumers of the electricity from Eskom?
Well, the peculiarity is exactly in the word of a fixed charge. So even with the rolling blackouts that we are currently experiencing, we are doing exactly that. We are paying for something that we are not receiving from Eskom. And I would just like to reiterate the point I made earlier, that the public should not be able to fit the bill for a service that is not delivered through to the end user in the first place. We are unfortunately experiencing a death spiral, and with these tariffs that are going up, a lot of people are going off-grid, those fortunate enough to afford solar PV and other alternative energy solutions. And that exacerbates the death spiral, in that Eskom is in effect losing additional revenue. So that burden will then be carried over to the people who remain on the grid, and we will just see the spiral continuing each and every year as Eskom cannot keep the lights on any further.
There's also something to be said, Brandon, about Nersa typically not giving Eskom the full allowable tariff increase that they would apply for. In other words, they would ask for a 32% increase, for example, but get much less than that. However, Eskom has gone to court in recent years where they have argued successfully for the implementation of those tariff increases. In your view, is Nersa doing the job to the best of their abilities? Because the reason they've lost in court is it has been found that they do not necessarily adhere to their methodologies around these tariff hikes.
That is where the sole problem of our current energy crisis lies. It lies with the methodology itself. A serious overhaul is needed to reinvent the methodology and to use the relevant information out there in order to structure the methodology so that at the end of the day, when these applications are made, the interest of the end user consumer and the country as a whole is considered. We just need to remember that Nersa is the energy regulator at the end of the day. Eskom is a license holder with Nersa. So whichever decision Nersa makes in terms of approving or disapproving Eskom's application is obviously subject to judicial review. But on the other hand, Nersa is also bound to the prescripts of the Electricity Regulation Act, which highlights that it needs to act in the interest of the public and not only the interest of Eskom, who is unfortunately at this stage the monopoly energy utility of South Africa. So there are a lot of players that need to play their part if we are going to come out of this crisis. But I seriously do suggest that the only way forward is to reinvent and restructure the way these tariff applications are made, as well as the information made available for public consumption, because we have experienced that in these kinds of public engagement and public comment process, the public is provided with information which they could not make sense of reasonably within such a short period of time. So we have experienced that when the public hearings commenced, Outa was one of nearly 6 participants from civil society. So we need to ask the question, is Nersa doing enough from its side in order to make the public aware of what's going on? Is Nersa and Eskom doing enough to educate the people out there of what is behind this current methodology? Because at this stage, the information provided is very ambiguous, and it's unreasonable to expect a general member of the public to make any sense of it and to meaningfully contribute to the public participation process. So this will obviously result in a tick box exercise, which Eskom knows, and Eskom uses this to its advantage to push through tariff applications.
Very interesting there. Let's talk about your proposals as Outa, therefore. If you are opposed to the proposed tariff increases, Eskom is going to be in trouble if they don't get what they are looking for, because we are often told that they are heavily indebted, and more importantly, that state company simply cannot be allowed to fail because it has a monopoly on providing electricity to the country. So if they don't get the funds that they need, they will collapse, and by extension, we as a country will fail. What do you propose are the revenue sources, therefore, for Eskom?
So there's a lot of solutions to this current crisis. First of all, the public and South Africa at large should not be penalized for Eskom's failure. Eskom has known about these troubles for years, and only now, while we are in a crisis, we start seeing them coming up with all sorts of emergency plans, and we've recently encountered the whole car power ship debacle that's unfolding before our eyes. So the public should really not try to foot the bill for that. Our problem or our solution in order to sustain energy generation in the future is to restructure the energy fleet, the energy availability. Just to give you an example, the country currently has roughly 44 gigawatts of installed generation capacity, which obviously consists of a large variety of energy sources. But we have not got enough capacity as far as renewable energy is concerned. And renewable energy is much more easier, much more cheaper to install, and it can come online much more quicker. Just in comparison, Vietnam, which is also a third world country, by the way, last year installed a generation capacity of around 9.1 gigawatts of solar PV generation capacity in its national grid. So that is almost a quarter of South Africa's total generation capacity. So then the question begs to be asked, well, what is standing in South Africa, DMRE and Eskom's way to get this type of energy sources online? Obviously, we do realize that there are a lot of red tape that still needs to be removed so that the public sector can also play a role in generation. There's no sense in trying to keep the aging power stations online, because it's like trying to continue to drive a vintage car model. I mean, you will just keep on paying for upkeep, and in the meantime, there will be no additional generation capacity available to provide for a growing economy, growing population. So the main issue in this instance, as far as load shedding is concerned, is to build out on the generation capacity and get the renewable programs rolled out as soon as possible. Although it may be slightly too late, it's never too late to make the right call and to steer the country in the right direction.
Brendan Slade, Project Manager on Energy at Outa. Thank you very much for your time and